Hope you're all doing well. This is a life group study video for week beginning 9th of February 2026. And the title for the message on Sunday was Being Slaves to Righteousness. Being Slaves to Righteousness. And we were looking at 1 Corinthians chapter 9, and we saw how this followed 1 Corinthians chapter 8, where Paul had talked about not eating food that had been sacrificed to idols so that they wouldn't become a stumbling block to the weak. And then in chapter 9, he shows how he was willing to forgo 3 of his own rights for the sake of the spread of the gospel. And so we can see these, that Paul willingly became enslaved by working for free, by adapting to those he wanted to reach, and by training his body. They're the 3 sections in chapter 9. So Paul isn't showing us here how to be saved, but how saved people lived. And so the first one then, Paul became enslaved by working for free. He lists 6 different arguments as to why he personally should be paid, but then he says twice, we did not use this right. So he forewent the right to be paid for his work in the church in Corinth. He willingly became enslaved in that sense. Second one was that Paul became enslaved by adapting to those he wanted to reach. 1 Corinthians 9 verse 19, though I am free and belong to no one, I made myself a slave to everyone to win as many as possible. Paul was willing to adapt his cultural relevance to ensure that the gospel spread. So to the Jew, he became like a Jew. To the one under the law, he became like one under the law. To the one not under the law, he became like one not under the law. To the weak, he became weak. So he was willing to adapt. And we can see this through the way Paul went to the synagogue and temple. We can see the way he instructed Timothy to be circumcised, not to be a stumbling block. So he was willing to adapt. Thirdly, Paul became enslaved by training his body. 1 Corinthians 9 verse 27, no, I strike a blow to my body and make it my slave, so that after I have preached to others, I myself will not be disqualified for the prize. And the message here isn't that every Christian must live really uncomfortable lives, but that the gospel teaches us to be willing to surrender real rights to help the gospel advance. And fits in nicely with one of our new cultural values as a church, the word devoted. And we thought, well, this is a big call, becoming enslaved by working for free, becoming enslaved by adapting to those we want to reach, and becoming enslaved by training our bodies. Like, that's a big call. And then we saw, though, that actually Philippians 2 verse 5 to 8, Jesus became in a way like a slave to us. Verse 6 of Philippians 2, who being in the very nature God, did not consider equality with God something to be used to his own advantage. Rather, he made himself nothing, verse 7, by taking the very nature of a servant. If you like, more than working for free, Jesus left heaven for us. More than adapting to those he wanted to reach, he became human like us. And more than training his body, Jesus ultimately gave up his body at the cross for us. And on top of Jesus already doing those things for us and us loving him in response, also within the passage is this offer of an eternal crown. And so the encouragement for us is to not run aimlessly, like not knowing where the finish line is, to not be unaware that there is an enemy to fight, and to run hard and long with the grace God gives to each and every one of us. And so we finish by saying, let's become joyfully enslaved by a vision for the gospel. Let's be willing to suffer financial, cultural, and comfort loss if it's needed in those areas. So here are 3 questions for you on this message of being slaves to righteousness from 1 Corinthians 9. Question number 1. What would healthily adapting to those around you for the sake of the gospel look like? What would healthily adapting to those around you for the sake of the gospel look like? Number 2. Where might grace be inviting you into personal discipline? Where might grace be inviting you into personal discipline? And thirdly, if you get to it, how does the thought of an eternal reward for your service to Jesus land with you, and why? How does the thought of an eternal reward for your service to Jesus land with you, and why? Hope that's been helpful.